The midday sun beat down, warming the cerulean surface of the pool. Sarah floated on her back, eyes closed, the gentle lapping of the water against her ears a soothing balm. This was her slice of heaven, the tangible reward for endless overtime shifts and meticulous budgeting. The pool, tucked neatly into the modest backyard of her single-story home in the meticulously manicured cul-de-sac of Harmony Estates, was more than just a place to cool off. It was her escape, her fortress against the anxieties of the world. She had designed every inch of it herself, from the subtle mosaic inlays at the shallow end to the cascading rock feature that murmured softly near the deep end. It was smaller than some of the grander resort-style pools in the more affluent sections of Harmony Estates, but it was hers. Private. Unblemished. A sudden sharp clang shattered the serenity. Sarah's eyes snapped open. Her inflatable flamingo, Pinky, usually tethered near the steps, was now upside down, bobbing wildly, and standing by the pristine white gate leading from her side yard, a woman with a perfectly coiffed blonde bob and a tightly pursed mouth was staring directly at her. Ms. Jenkins, Brenda Sterling, the formidable president of the Harmony Estates Homeowners Association, announced, her voice cutting through the humid air like a finely sharpened blade. I trust you're aware of the bylaws regarding recreational water features? Sarah slowly righted herself, pushing damp strands of hair from her face. Good afternoon, Brenda, and yes, I'm quite familiar with them. My pool is entirely compliant. Brenda, a woman who seemed to exist solely to find fault in the lives of others, gave a disapproving sniff. Compliance, Ms. Jenkins, is a fluid concept, especially when it pertains to, shall we say, community aesthetics. Her gaze swept over Sarah's yard, lingering briefly on a solitary gnome peeking from behind a potted fern. Sarah had deliberately placed it there, a tiny act of rebellion against Brenda's monochromatic vision of suburban perfection. My aesthetics are my own, Sarah replied, wading to the steps. The cool water felt good, but a chill of irritation was starting to spread through her. Unless you're suggesting a gnome violates a bylaw, I'm not sure what the issue is. Brenda's lips thinned further. The issue, Ms. Jenkins, is precedent and the general feel of the neighborhood. While your pool on paper is private, its very existence creates a temptation. A temptation? Sarah stepped out of the pool, grabbing a towel. For whom? For others, Brenda declared, gesturing vaguely at the perfectly trimmed hedges that separated Sarah's property from her immediate neighbors. Children, pets, those who might misunderstand its nature. We've had a number of inquiries. Sarah's brow furrowed. Inquiries? From whom? No one has ever approached me about my pool. Brenda adjusted the pristine white collar of her blouse. Suffice it to say, certain residents have expressed concerns about the perceived exclusivity. Harmony Estates prides itself on its communal spirit. Your pool, while technically on your deed, could be misconstrued as divisive. Sarah stared, incredulous. Divisive? It's a pool, in my backyard. Are you suggesting I share it with the entire neighborhood? A faint, almost imperceptible smirk flickered across Brenda's face before it vanished, replaced by her usual mask of stern propriety. Of course not, Ms. Jenkins. That would be absurd. However, a less ostentatious display might be in order. Perhaps more subdued pool toys, less vibrant landscaping. Or dare I say, considering the summer heat, a more communal approach to cool-down options. Her eyes drifted pointedly towards the fence shared with the house next door. The Harrisons, for instance, mentioned they'd appreciate a more inclusive environment. The Harrisons? Sarah knew them, a quiet, elderly couple who rarely left their home. The idea they'd be inquiring about her pool felt deeply suspicious. This was Brenda. Always Brenda, cloaking her personal desires in the guise of community concern. My pool is private, Brenda, Sarah reiterated, her voice firmer now. "And it will remain that way, with my gnome and my flamingo." Brenda's nostrils flared slightly. "Very well, Ms. Jenkins. Consider this an official notation in your HOA file. We shall see how these inquiries evolve." With a final, chillingly deliberate glance, Brenda turned and strode away, her steps echoing with an unsettling authority. Sarah watched her go, a knot tightening in her stomach. This wasn't just Brenda being Brenda. This felt different, more pointed, more aggressive. The inquiries sounded like a fabrication, a thinly veiled threat. Sarah had lived in Harmony Estates for 5 years, and while Brenda had always been a nuisance, her interference rarely extended beyond flowerbed regulations or approved exterior paint colors. The pool, however, was clearly a new, tempting target. Over. The next few days, Brenda's presence became a palpable, oppressive weight. Sarah noticed Brenda's meticulously polished SUV idling slowly past her house multiple times a day. Sometimes Brenda would be out walking her invisible dog, stopping pointedly at the edge of Sarah's property line, ostensibly admiring the manicured bushes but undeniably casting glances towards the pool. Sarah even found a small, almost imperceptible footprint on the edge of her pool deck one morning, a fresh mark that hadn't been there the night before. She dismissed it as a delivery person, or perhaps a curious neighborhood cat. But the nagging feeling persisted. One sweltering afternoon, Sarah decided to work from home, needing the respite of her pool during breaks. She was on a video call when she heard a distinct splash. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't the gentle ripple of the automatic cleaner. It was a substantial, human-sized splash. Muttering an excuse to her colleagues, Sarah muted her microphone and darted to the back window. Her breath hitched. There, in her pool, was a child. A small boy, no older than 7 or 8, gleefully splashing near the deep end, and standing at the shallow end, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face, was Brenda Sterling, Sarah's. Vision tunneled. This wasn't an inquiry. This was a brazen invasion. Her private sanctuary defiled. She threw open the back door and marched onto the deck, her voice rising with each furious step. "Brenda, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" Brenda, startled but quickly recovering, turned, her smirk replaced by a look of carefully feigned surprise. "Oh, Ms. Jenkins, how lovely to see you. We were just enjoying this delightful and communal amenity." She gestured grandly at Sarah's pool as if it were a public park. The child, oblivious, continued to splash. Communal amenity? Sarah's voice trembled with rage. "This is my private property. This is my pool. You are trespassing. And you brought a child onto my property without my permission." Now, Ms. Jenkins," Brenda said, her tone saccharine. "There's no need for such theatrics. Young Timmy here was simply overheated, and I, as HOA president, am merely ensuring the well-being of our residents. Your gate was, shall we say, ajar." "My gate was not ajar," Sarah retorted, her eyes blazing. "I lock it every single time. You opened it, Brenda. You let him in." Brenda waved a dismissive hand. "A minor oversight, perhaps, a misunderstanding. But look, he's enjoying himself. Such a shame to spoil a child's fun over a triviality." "A triviality?" Sarah was practically shaking. "This is my property, my privacy. Get out of my pool, both of you, now." Timmy, sensing the shift in mood, stopped, splashing, his innocent eyes wide. Brenda sighed dramatically. "Very well, Miss Jenkins, if you insist on being so unneighborly. Timmy, darling, time to go. It seems Ms. Jenkins prefers her pool to remain a monument to her own self-importance." Brenda herded the boy out of the pool and then, with deliberate slowness, gathered her things from a lounge chair Sarah had purchased herself. As she passed, "Sarah," she leaned in, her voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. "You know, Ms. Jenkins, Some things are just too good to keep to oneself, especially when one is part of a community. She gave Sarah a chillingly triumphant smile, then led Timmy away, the sound of her perfectly modulated footsteps fading down the side path. Sarah stood there, breathing heavily, the phantom echo of splashes still in the air. Her sanctuary felt tainted, violated. This wasn't just about a pool anymore. This was about control. About Brenda trying to assert dominance, to break Sarah's spirit. She spent the rest of the day scrubbing the pool, as if she could erase Brenda's presence from the very water. But the feeling of invasion lingered. She knew Brenda wouldn't stop. The inquiries would escalate. The misunderstandings would become more frequent, more brazen. That night, lying awake, Sarah's mind raced. What could she do? Call the police? Brenda would deny everything, paint Sarah as an overly dramatic, unneighborly recluse. The HOA board? Brenda was the board, effectively. She had everyone wrapped around her perfectly manicured finger. Sarah needed proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof. An idea, born of desperation and a simmering rage, began to form. She remembered. The small, high-definition security camera her tech-savvy nephew had given her last Christmas, still in its box in the back of her closet. He'd shown her how it worked. Motion-activated, night vision, cloud storage. It was meant for her front porch, but it could serve a far more important purpose now. The next morning, Sarah drove to the hardware store, buying additional mounting brackets and some artificial foliage. She spent the entire afternoon meticulously planning. The camera needed to be discreet, yet have a clear view of the pool gate and a good portion of the deck. It needed to be hidden from CA. Sarah replayed the video segment of Brenda Sterling's triumphant plunge countless times. Each viewing fueled her indignation, but also a cold, precise determination. She had the proof. Now, how to use it. The immediate visceral urge was to blast it across every social media platform, expose Brenda for the hypocrite she was. But Harmony Estates was a small, insular community, and Brenda, despite her tyrannical nature, wielded significant power. A direct public confrontation might backfire, making Sarah seem like the unstable aggressor. She needed to be strategic. She also needed witnesses. Not just the silent eye of her camera, but people. People who would be compelled to act. The next morning, Sarah called her closest confidant in the neighborhood, Maria Rodriguez, a feisty, no-nonsense grandmother who lived 3 doors down and had a healthy disdain for HOA bureaucracy. Maria, a former elementary school principal, had a keen sense of justice and an even keener ear for gossip. "Maria, I need your help," Sarah said, keeping her voice low. "It's about Brenda." "Oh, Lord. What's that woman done now?" Maria's voice crackled with a mix of exasperation and morbid curiosity. Sarah explained the full extent of Brenda's intrusions, from the subtle hints about communal spirit to the audacious act of bringing the child into her pool, culminating in the previous day's blatant trespass with other board members. She carefully omitted the detail about the camera for now. "She actually swam in your pool?" Maria gasped, her voice escalating. "That audacity, that absolute gall. Does she think she owns Harmony Estates? Lock, stock, and barrel?" "She certainly acts like it," Sarah replied. "And I have a plan. But I need you to be there. And maybe a few others." Maria was instantly on board. "Consider it done. I know a few residents who are just itching for Brenda to overstep. The Johnsons, she fined them for leaving their trash cans out too early. The Chengs, she made them repaint their mailbox because it was too bright. This is the last straw for a lot of people." Over the next 2 days, Maria worked the phones, a whirlwind of hushed conversations and strategic invitations. Sarah, meanwhile, transferred the crucial video clips from her cloud storage to a flash drive, labeling them meticulously with dates and times. She also did some research, poring over the Harmony Estates HOA bylaws, specifically sections on private property, trespassing, and the duties and responsibilities of board members. She found a clause, buried deep in the fine print, about the proper protocol for addressing community disputes and complaints against board members. It required a formal petition, signed by a specific percentage of homeowners, to call a special board meeting, and a separate clause outlining the grounds for a board member's removal, which included gross misconduct and abuse of power. It was a long shot, but it was a shot. The following Saturday, a small but determined group of Harmony Estates residents gathered in Sarah's living room. Maria, the Johnsons, the Changs, and a few others who had suffered under Brenda's arbitrary rule. The air was thick with anticipation, tinged with skepticism. "All right, Sarah, spill it," Mr. Johnson urged, looking around nervously. "What's this big secret about Brenda?" Sarah took a deep breath. "I'm going to show you something. Something that proves Brenda Sterling isn't just an overbearing HOA president. She's a trespasser, a hypocrite, and she abuses her power." She plugged the flash drive into her laptop, connecting it to the large screen TV. The room grew silent as the first clip played. It was the interaction with Brenda and young Timmy. The gate was ajar lie, Brenda's smug expression, Sarah's desperate fury. Murmurs rippled through the room. Then Sarah played the second, more damning clip, the clear, unobstructed view of Brenda and the other two board members brazenly swimming in her pool. The casual way Brenda dropped Sarah's new flamingo float into the water. The laughter, the confident immersion. A collective gasp filled the room. Mrs. Henderson and Ms. Albright, present in the video, were absent from the room, their absence speaking volumes. "My God!" whispered Mrs. Johnson, her hand flying to her mouth. "I can't believe it." "She made me repaint my mailbox," Mr. Cheng exclaimed, his face reddening with anger. "And she's doing this?" Maria, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward. "This is undeniable. This is a clear violation of privacy, of property rights, and for the HOA president to be doing it, it's a monumental abuse of power." Sarah paused the video. "This isn't just about my pool. It's about Brenda's pattern of behavior, her belief that the rules apply to everyone but her, her intimidation tactics. She tried to make me feel isolated, to make me think I was crazy, but I wasn't. And now, neither are you." She then laid out her plan, a formal petition to call a special board meeting to address Brenda's misconduct, and if necessary, to initiate proceedings for her removal. She had printed copies of the relevant bylaws, highlighted. She had a draft petition ready. "This is risky," Mr. Johnson cautioned. "Brenda has a lot of connections. She'll fight back." "Let her," Sarah said, her voice steady. "We have the truth on our side, and a camera doesn't lie." The residents, galvanized by the irrefutable evidence and their shared grievances, began signing the petition with grim determination. Within an hour, Sarah had more than enough signatures to demand a special board meeting. The petition was delivered to the HOA management company's office the following Monday, via certified mail with a read receipt. Sarah also sent a polite, but firm, email to the entire HOA board, including Brenda, informing them of the petition and attaching a single, low-resolution screenshot from the video. Just enough to spark curiosity and dread. The response was immediate and predictable. Brenda called Sarah within hours, her voice a tightly wound coil of barely suppressed fury. "Miss Jenkins, what is the meaning of this slanderous, baseless accusation?" she shrieked, forgoing her usual polished demeanor. "A petition? Are you out of your mind? And that ridiculous picture, what is that even supposed to be?" "It's a still from a video, Brenda," Sarah replied calmly, her heart thumping but her voice unwavering. "A video of you, Mrs. Henderson, and Ms. Albright swimming in my private pool, on my private property, without my permission." A stunned silence hung on the line. Then Brenda recovered, her voice dripping with venom. You set up a camera? You spied on me? That's illegal. That's a violation of my privacy." "Your privacy, Brenda?" Sarah scoffed. "You were trespassing on my property. There's no expectation of privacy when you're committing a crime on someone else's land. And for the record, my camera is entirely legal, clearly aimed at my own property, and was installed solely for security purposes after your repeated intrusions." "This is a witch hunt!" Brenda wailed, abandoning all pretense of composure. "I will have you removed from this community. I will sue you for defamation. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Ms. Jenkins." "Oh, I think I do," Sarah countered. "I'm dealing with an HOA president who believes the rules don't apply to her. I have the video, Brenda. And now, so do enough residents to demand a special meeting. The meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday. I suggest you prepare your defense." Sarah hung up, her hand shaking. The confrontation had been exhilarating, terrifying, and utterly necessary. The battle lines were drawn. News of the petition and the implied scandal spread through Harmony Estates like wildfire. Whispers turned into open discussions at the community park, at the grocery store, and over backyard fences. Some residents were horrified, others gleefully vindicated. A few staunch Brenda loyalists rallied around her, scoffing at the ridiculous accusations and calling Sarah a troublemaker. The community was divided. The special HOA board meeting, held in the sparsely decorated community clubhouse, was packed. Every chair was taken, and residents stood along the walls, a palpable tension filling the room. Brenda sat at the head of the long table, flanked by a nervous Mrs. Henderson and a pale Ms. Albright. Her face was carefully neutral, a mask of injured dignity, but her eyes, when they darted to Sarah, were filled with a raw, unadulterated hatred. Sarah sat amongst the petitioning residents, Maria by her side, a silent pillar of support. Brenda, ever the performer, opened the meeting with a practiced sigh. "Fellow residents, I am deeply saddened by the need for this unscheduled gathering. It appears we have a disgruntled homeowner who has chosen to engage in baseless smears and character assassination." She launched into a lengthy, rambling speech, painting herself as a dedicated public servant, a victim of malicious gossip, and a champion of community values. She implied Sarah was unstable, attention-seeking, and had fabricated the entire story. Mrs. Henderson and Ms. Albright offered weak nods of agreement, their eyes avoiding Sarah's. When Brenda finally paused for breath, her gaze sweeping over, "The room for affirmation." Sarah rose. "Thank you, Brenda," Sarah said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the residual tension. "I appreciate your narrative. However, I believe facts speak louder than accusations." She walked to the front of the room, carrying her laptop and the projector she had borrowed from Maria. A collective murmur went through the crowd. Brenda's eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. "Brenda has accused me of slander and fabrication," Sarah continued, ignoring Brenda's frantic attempt to interject. "She has denied invading my privacy and trespassing on my property. She has even suggested that my security measures are somehow illegal." She plugged in the project. The immediate aftermath of Brenda Sterling's theatrical exit from the HOA meeting was a heady mix of relief and lingering disbelief. Harmony Estates had been under her iron thumb for so long that her sudden ignominious removal felt almost surreal. Sarah, the architect of this downfall, found herself a reluctant hero. Neighbors who had once barely offered a polite nod now approached her with beaming smiles, offering heartfelt thanks, casseroles, and bottles of wine. The quiet, timid Mrs. Henderson, still pale from the ordeal, even sent a handwritten apology, confessing how Brenda had manipulated her into complicity. But even in victory, Sarah knew peace wouldn't come easily. Brenda Sterling was not a woman who accepted defeat gracefully. Her humiliation was public, profound, and deeply personal. Sarah fully expected a counterattack, though its form remained elusive. She kept her security camera active, its silent, gaze still sweeping over her pool and backyard, a constant reminder of the vigilance required. The interim HOA board, now without Brenda's domineering presence, seemed almost paralyzed by its newfound freedom. They were hesitant, almost timid in making decisions. Maria, ever the community organizer, saw an opportunity. "This is our chance, Sarah," she declared over coffee one morning. "We need good people on that board, people who actually care about the community, not just power." Sarah, still recovering from the emotional toll of the confrontation, was reluctant. "Maria, I just want my pool back, my peace. I'm not cut out for HOA politics." "Nonsense," Maria scoffed. "You stood up to Brenda when no one else would. You're a natural leader, and who better to ensure the bylaws actually serve the residents instead of being weapons for petty tyrants?" Despite her reservations, Sarah found herself drawn into the discussions about the future of the HOA. She attended meetings offering insights born from her recent ordeal. The community, still buzzing with the scandal, looked to her for guidance. Before she knew it, residents were approaching her, urging her to run for the vacant president's seat in the upcoming special election. The irony was not lost on her. She, who detested HOA overreach, was now being asked to lead it. Meanwhile, Brenda was not idle. Exiled from the HOA board, stripped of her perceived authority, she retreated into the shadows, but her presence was still felt. Her once constant SUV patrols ceased, but strange occurrences began. Anonymous flyers, poorly photocopied and riddled with grammatical errors, began appearing on car windshields and community bulletin boards, accusing Sarah of being a spy, a meddling busybody, and of destroying the fabric of Harmony Estates. They hinted darkly at a hidden agenda and a desire to control everything. Then came the petty vandalism. Sarah's garden gnome, the tiny symbol of her defiance, disappeared one night, only to reappear days later perched atop the main community sign, spray-painted neon pink. Her mail was tampered with, her packages occasionally arriving opened. Nothing major, nothing that warranted police involvement, but enough to gnaw at her sense of security, a constant reminder that Brenda was watching, lurking. One, particularly unnerving incident involved Pinky, her beloved flamingo float. Sarah had left it carefully deflated and stored in her garage. One morning, she found it inflated, floating conspicuously in the middle of her pool, a small, crudely scrawled note taped to its neck. "Some things are just too good to keep to oneself." It was Brenda's exact words from their first confrontation, chillingly delivered. Sarah installed more cameras, repositioning them to cover different angles of her property, expanding her digital net. She upgraded her home security system. Harmony Estates, once a haven of suburban tranquility, now felt like a low-stakes battlefield. The special election for HOA president was set for early fall. Sarah, swayed by Maria and the overwhelming support from her neighbors, reluctantly agreed to run. Her campaign was simple: transparency, fairness, and a return to neighborly respect. Her opponent was a newcomer, a man named Roger Peterson, who had recently moved into one of the larger, more expensive homes in the estate. He seemed pleasant enough, but his campaign rhetoric, oddly specific and aggressive, quickly raised Sarah's suspicions. Roger's flyers and social media posts, professionally designed and surprisingly well-funded, constantly hammered on themes of restoring order, protecting property values from rogue elements, and bringing back a sense of dignified calm to Harmony Estates. His veiled jabs at the recent turmoil clearly pointed to the Brenda scandal, and by extension, to Sarah. He even went so far as to suggest that some people were using the HOA for personal vendettas, a direct echo of Brenda's earlier accusations. Sarah knew Brenda was behind him. The polished flyers, the thinly veiled attacks. It was Brenda's style, but with a new face. Roger Peterson was Brenda's puppet, her proxy in the fight to regain control. The election night was tense. The community clubhouse was once again packed, but this time the atmosphere was different. Less outrage, more quiet anticipation. Roger Peterson, looking far too smug for Sarah's liking, stood confidently at the front of the room, flanked by a few new faces Sarah didn't recognize as regular residents, slick, corporate-looking types who seemed out of place in their suburban clubhouse. Brenda Sterling was there, too, sitting in the back row, almost hidden, but her eyes, fixed on Sarah, gleamed with an unsettling mix of anticipation and malice. She was waiting for Sarah to fall. As the votes were tallied by the interim board, the silence in the room became almost unbearable. Sarah felt a nervous tremor in her stomach. Had she miscalculated? Had the initial outrage faded, replaced by a desire for a return to the old, if rigid, order? The interim board chairman, Mr. Davies, a mild-mannered accountant, cleared his throat. The results are in. He unfolded a slip of paper. For the position of HOA president, Roger Peterson received, he paused, the silence stretching, 142 votes. A small ripple of applause came from the back of the room, Brenda's corner. Roger Peterson allowed himself a satisfied, triumphant smile. And Sarah Jenkins, Mr. Davies continued, his voice regaining some strength, received 158 votes, a collective gasp, then a roar of applause erupted. Sarah felt a wave of dizzying relief. She had won. Barely, but she had won. The room was a cacophony of cheers and congratulations. Maria rushed to hug her, her eyes shining with pride. Roger Peterson's smug smile vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. He stared at Mr. Davies as if expecting him to declare a recount, but the numbers were clear. And then, as Sarah made her way to the front, acknowledging the cheers, she saw Brenda Sterling, in the back row, her face contorted. Not with anger, but with a raw, almost childlike fury. Her eyes, fixed on Sarah, burned with an intensity that promised retribution. This wasn't over. Brenda had merely lost a battle, not the war. As the applause continued, Brenda rose silently, her silhouette framed by the clubhouse exit. She didn't storm out this time. She merely walked, with a chillingly deliberate pace, into the fading twilight, leaving Sarah to her victory, a victory that suddenly felt less like a triumph and more like a warning. Sarah's victory was short-lived. The initial euphoria quickly replaced by a creeping dread. Brenda's silent departure from the clubhouse, devoid of her usual histrionics, was far more unsettling than any outburst. It felt like a promise of something darker, more calculated. Sarah had won the election, but Brenda had merely retreated to plan her next strike. The first hint of the escalating war came not from anonymous flyers, but from the Harmony Estates official HOA website. One morning, residents woke to find a new community announcements section. It contained a meticulously crafted anonymous post titled Concerns Regarding Property Value and Neighborhood Safety. The post, while not naming Sarah directly, used thinly veiled language to suggest that certain unneighborly actions and vigilante surveillance were creating an unsettling atmosphere in the community, driving down property values and making residents feel unsafe in their own homes. It called for a community-wide meeting to discuss new security measures and privacy protocols that seemed entirely aimed at restricting Sarah's camera usage. Sarah knew it was Brenda. The sophisticated language, the subtle manipulation of fear. It was her signature, but amplified. The post quickly ignited a new wave of division. While many residents remained supportive of Sarah, a vocal minority, easily swayed by fear-mongering, and perhaps eager for any return to order, began to echo the concerns. Some even began to question Sarah's surveillance, suggesting she was now the one overstepping. Then came the formal HOA notices, Within days, Sarah received a series of official-looking letters, each citing a minor, almost absurd violation. Her carefully manicured rose bushes exceeding height regulations. Her garden hose, visible from the street. The placement of her trash bins, inconsistent with community standards. These were the petty, nitpicking bylaws Brenda had always weaponized, but now they were coming with official HOA letterhead, even though Brenda was no longer president. Sarah quickly discovered the loophole. Roger Peterson, though defeated in the presidential race, had quietly been voted onto the board as a general member, likely through a backroom deal orchestrated by Brenda before the election. And it became clear he was Brenda's proxy, pushing through these frivolous complaints. The new interim board, still timid and overwhelmed, was struggling to assert control, allowing Roger to subtly hijack the system. Sarah found herself spending hours drafting carefully worded rebuttals, gathering evidence of compliance, and pushing back against each citation. It was exhausting, a deliberate war of attrition designed to wear her down. The tension escalated when Brenda's attacks became more personal, crossing the line from petty harassment to outright malice. Sarah's social media accounts, usually private, suddenly became targets of coordinated attacks. Old, innocuous photos were reshared with malicious captions. Anonymous accounts bombarded her with hateful comments and veiled threats. Her phone number, which she kept private, was somehow leaked, leading to a flurry of harassing calls and texts at all hours. Sarah changed her phone number, tightened her social media privacy settings, and spent hours cleaning up her digital footprint. But the feeling of being hunted, of her personal life being dissected and attacked, was profoundly unsettling. Maria, ever watchful, noticed Brenda's escalating audacity. "She's desperate, Sarah," Maria observed, her brow furrowed. "She's losing control, and she hates it. This is her last stand. She'll stop at nothing." The true turning point came on a hot summer night. Sarah, restless and unable to sleep, was sitting by her window, looking out at the moonlit pool. The soft hum of the night was suddenly broken by a sharp metallic scraping sound coming from her backyard. Her heart leaped into her throat. She grabbed her phone, opening the security camera app. The live feed flickered to life, the night vision painting her backyard in ghostly greens and grays. Her breath hitched. A figure was at her pool gate. It was Brenda. She wasn't just opening the gate. She was doing something to the lock. A small, dark object glinted in her hand. Brenda was disabling the lock, rendering it useless. Then, with a chillingly deliberate motion, she pushed the gate open, stepped onto Sarah's property, and looked directly into the camera lens, her eyes, even in the infrared, gleaming with a malevolent triumph. She didn't enter the pool. Instead, she knelt, by the edge near the filtration system. Sarah zoomed in, her blood running cold. Brenda was holding a small, clear bottle. As Sarah watched, horrified, Brenda unscrewed the cap and began pouring a milky, viscous liquid directly into the pool's skimmer. Sarah knew immediately what it was. Her pool filter had been acting up, and she'd been researching solutions. This was a powerful, corrosive chemical, far stronger than anything used for routine pool maintenance. It was designed to clear severe blockages, but if misused or used in an otherwise healthy system, it could destroy the sensitive filtration components, corrode the lining, and turn the water toxic. It was an act of pure, destructive sabotage. Brenda finished pouring, capped the bottle, and then, with another chillingly smug look at the camera, dropped the empty bottle into Sarah's trash can, clearly intending to frame her for improper disposal. She then carefully closed the now disabled gate and disappeared into the night. Sarah was out of bed in a flash, throwing on clothes, her mind racing. This wasn't petty vandalism anymore. This was a deliberate act of destruction, with potential, environmental and health risks. Her hands trembled as she called the police, then a specialist hazardous materials team she found online, explaining the situation with frantic urgency. Within minutes, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The flashing blue and red lights illuminated Harmony Estates, cutting through the serene darkness. Neighbors, roused by the commotion, peered from their windows, whispering. The officers, initially skeptical of a pool chemical complaint, became grim-faced as Sarah showed them the crystal-clear security footage on her phone. The video, time-stamped and unedited, clearly showed Brenda Sterling disabling the gate, entering Sarah's property, and pouring the corrosive liquid into the pool. The hazmat team arrived shortly after, clad in protective gear, their presence adding a stark, alarming visual to the scene. They quickly confirmed the presence of a highly corrosive agent in the pool, necessitating immediate decontamination and a lengthy, expensive repair to the filtration system and potentially the pool lining itself. As dawn broke, casting long, accusing shadows across Harmony Estates, a police car pulled up to Brenda Sterling's meticulously kept house. Two officers emerged, stern-faced, and walked up her manicured pathway. Sarah watched from her window, a strange mix of exhaustion, relief, and a profound sense of justice settling over her. Brenda Sterling, HOA Karen, was about to face the consequences of her most destructive act. And this time, there was no hiding, no denying. The camera had captured it all. The trap had closed. The rising sun cast long, accusing shadows across Harmony Estates as the police officers approached Brenda Sterling's front door. Sarah watched from her window, a complex mixture of exhaustion, vindication, and a strange, hollow emptiness churning within her. The previous night had been a blur of frantic phone calls, police interviews, and the eerie, glowing presence of the hazmat team dissecting her violated sanctuary. Now, as the officers knocked firmly on Brenda's door, a final, definitive chapter felt poised to begin. Brenda, still in her silk robe, opened the door, her face a mask of practiced indignation. "Officers, what is the meaning of this intrusion? Do you know who I am?" Her voice, usually so imperious, held a tremor of something Sarah hadn't heard before. Genuine fear. "Ms. Sterling," one of the officers stated calmly, holding up a small, clear plastic bag. Inside was the empty bottle of corrosive pool chemical, recovered from Sarah's trash bin. "We have reason to believe you were involved in a property crime last night. Specifically, the willful destruction of private property and the improper disposal of hazardous materials at Ms. Jenkins's residence." Brenda's eyes darted to the bottle, then to Sarah's house, where the hazmat team was still meticulously working. Her face, usually so composed, contorted into a mask of pure shock and dawning horror. "That's preposterous. A lie. I was home all night. Ask anyone." "We have video evidence, Ms. Sterling," the second officer interjected, his voice firm. "Clear, unedited footage of you entering Ms. Jenkins' property, disabling her gate, and pouring a substance into her pool. We also have expert confirmation that the substance is highly corrosive and has caused significant damage." Brenda's jaw dropped. The carefully constructed facade she had maintained for years, the one that allowed her to bully and manipulate, crumbled completely. She stammered, "Video? That's illegal. She can't do that." "Ms. Jenkins's cameras are legally placed on her own property for security purposes," the officer explained, his tone devoid of sympathy. "Now we'd like you to come down to the station for questioning." The image of Brenda Sterling, once the untouchable Queen of Harmony Estates, being led away in handcuffs, still in her dressing gown, became the defining moment of the scandal. Neighbors emerged from their homes, hushed and wide-eyed, watching the spectacle. Whispers turned to open exclamations. "Finally, and I knew it!" The illusion of Brenda's power shattered completely. The legal process moved swiftly. Sarah, armed with her meticulous video evidence and detailed logs of Brenda's harassment, found herself a key witness. The hazmat report provided irrefutable proof of the damage and the dangerous nature of Brenda's act. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Brenda's high-priced lawyer advised her to plead guilty to property damage and a lesser charge of criminal mischief, rather than risk a trial that could uncover even more of her past abuses. Brenda was sentenced to probation, a hefty fine covering the extensive pool repairs and hazmat cleanup and mandatory community service. Crucially, she was issued a strict restraining order, prohibiting her from coming within a specific distance of Sarah's property or contacting her in any way. The fine was crippling, forcing Brenda to sell her meticulously maintained, oversized home in Harmony Estates. The queen of the HOA was dethroned, financially ruined, and banished from the kingdom she had so fiercely controlled. Life in Harmony Estates slowly began to shift. Without Brenda's oppressive influence, the HOA found a new, more collaborative rhythm. Sarah, despite her initial reluctance, took on the role of interim HOA president, working tirelessly with Maria and other community members to rewrite outdated bylaws, promote transparency, and foster a genuine sense of community. She established clear, fair guidelines, ensuring that the HOA served its residents rather than terrorizing them. One sunny afternoon, months after the incident, Sarah floated serenely in her newly repaired and pristine pool. The water sparkled. Under the sun, the gentle murmur of the rock featured a soothing melody. Pinky, her flamingo float, bobbed lazily beside her. The gate, now fortified with an unpickable lock, felt truly secure. The sense of peace was profound, deeper than before. It wasn't just the absence of Brenda's threat. It was the knowledge that she had fought for her sanctuary and won. She had reclaimed her space, not just physically, but emotionally. As she closed her eyes, letting the warm water embrace her, a faint memory drifted through her mind. Brenda's words hissed with venom. She thought my pool was hers. An ironic chuckle escaped Sarah's lips. Brenda had indeed thought the pool was hers for the taking, a symbol of her dominion. But Sarah's trap, born of desperation and fueled by righteous anger, had caught the HOA Karen red-handed. And in doing so, it had restored not just Sarah's peace, but the harmony of an entire community. The pool, once a battleground, was now, truly and unequivocally, hers again.